For more weather information, you know where to go on the web. Or www.weather.com is the place to go. Right now, on the nation's weather and the forecast.
Right out of the ground as if they're blades of grass. Most people have never got to get out of the way.
Worried about traffic tie-ups on your way to work? Well, don't worry. Tune into New Jersey 101.5 FM radio. We've got traffic reports every 15 minutes around the clock. And how about the weather? Rain or shine, we've got the forecast. Tune into New Jersey 101.5 weather reports every 10 minutes, every hour, every day. And watch the New Jersey 101.5 morning show, weekdays from 6 to 10 a.m. right here on CN8, the Comcast network.
I'm sure other kids were interested in weather, but I was a real fanatic about it. Now I look at the winds on a computer, and I tell people about it. The best part? I get to watch the wind for a living.
Right now, it's your local forecast on the Weather Channel.
Thanks for tuning in to Storm Watch. We're going to go right into Hurricane George, and we'll have the Spanish language forecast for Hurricane George in just a minute. Located now, the center 85 miles east-southeast of San Juan, Puerto Rico, with top winds 110 miles an hour, which is right on the brink of Category 3, which is capable of extensive damage. Moving west-northwest at 16 miles an hour, and the pressure 970 millibars has been fairly steady since yesterday evening. Hurricane warnings are up. Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, out to the U.S. Virgin Islands and the British Virgin Islands. That means hurricane conditions now in some areas end within the next 24 hours back to the Dominican Republic, with hurricane watches north shore of Haiti and into the southern Bahamas. On the visible satellite, we don't see an eye very clearly, but there is an eye right about there, that being the island of St. Croix, getting hit very hard right now. St. Thomas to the north is near the edge of the eye, with no doubt some gusts up to 100 miles an hour, even higher most likely in St. Croix right now, and moving through the Virgin Islands toward the island of Vieques, which is right here. So on this side of the eye, conditions probably gusting to 90 or 100, but you could be getting the full fury, 110 mile an hour gusts or more, which includes the island of St. Croix right now. We will have a full update at the top of the hour. Otherwise, Tropical Storm Ivan in the eastern Atlantic Ocean is only 40 miles an hour, but look at the trajectory. It seems to be moving northwest rather than west, actually gaining some strength apparently, but it doesn't look like a big threat to land masses to the west. It looks like it will stay over to the ocean. Well, now from our sister station, the Weather Channel in Latin America, we have Jose Daniel Marquez with the Spanish language version.
Okay. Muy buenas tardes, amigos. En estos momentos quisiera mencionar que el Centro Nacional de Huracanes localiza este poderoso huracán en 17.8 grados norte, 64.9 grados oeste, alrededor de 85 millas al este-sureste de la capital de Puerto Rico, San Juan, con vientos máximos sostenidos de 110 millas por hora y su trayectoria es oeste-noroeste alrededor de 16 millas por hora. Mientras que nosotros podemos observar que hay avisos y alertas en gran parte del Caribe Oriental, continúan los avisos en Puerto Rico y República Dominicana y alertas para el sureste de las Bahamas y para el norte de Haití. Observando la foto de satélite, especialmente para el área de Puerto Rico, podemos ver que este sistema ya está sumamente cerca de la isla de Puerto Rico y las condiciones se están deteriorando rápidamente sobre la isla. Y ya, haciendo un close-up, podemos ver la extensa masa nubosa que se acerca sobre la isla de Puerto Rico. Manténgase atentos.
We're tracking the path of Hurricane George as it barrels through the Caribbean and heads toward the U.S. We're ahead of the storm, and so are you. Watch Weather Center.
If you're using two products, one to kill germs and one to shine your kitchen, it can feel like you've got two of everything. It doesn't have to. Introducing new Windex Antibacterial Glass and Surface Cleaner. The first antibacterial that not only kills tough germs, but leaves a streak-free Windex shine. Without the film the leading antibacterial can leave behind. So why deal with two unless you have to?
We're trying to stay calm and do whatever we can. That way, just for the safety of our whole family.
It's not like the other years, so it's going to be tough, I guess.
Preparations continue in Puerto Rico as Hurricane George closes in. Food supplies and building materials are in demand as residents prepare for the storm. Welcome to this edition of Weather Center. I'm Lisa Moser. We'll have the current conditions across the U.S. in just a moment. But first, the latest details on Hurricane George. Let's join Jim Cantori in the Forecast Center. Jim?
Thank you, Lisa. It's been a rough ride for some, especially those in Antigua, St. Kitts, and also St. Martin. They've reported anywhere from moderate to serious damage there, and the island of Nevis as well. So those areas now will have to deal with the process of cleaning up in the next couple of days or so. But certainly St. Croix, St. Thomas, and the island of Puerto Rico are under the gun as we watch this thing move west this afternoon. Hurricane George is what I speak of. Let's take a look at the latest advisory from the Hurricane Center, and you can see at 17.8 north, 64.9 west. It's about 85 miles east-southeast of San Juan. Winds at 110, so we've got a strong Cat 2 here. Pressure is at 972 millibars, so it's actually come up a little bit. It's been relatively staying right around 970 millibars, so not a huge change there. The U.S. and British Virgin Islands, as well as Puerto Rico and the Dominican, obviously under hurricane warnings here, and the watches are posted for the north coast of Haiti, the southeastern Bahamas, and we believe they will be posted later on today for the eastern provinces of Cuba. Dr. Steve Lyons joins us now. He's our hurricane expert, and certainly, Steve, this is a powerful hurricane, even though it wasn't 150 like it was a couple of days ago.
Yeah, thank goodness it was not 150, or we would probably seen a huge amount of damage, because the wind damage goes up as a square of the wind speed. So even though you may feel unfortunate now, consider yourself fortunate compared to a 150-mile-an-hour hurricane.
All right, we got our problems, though. This is the current satellite picture I want to show you. And what we'll do is basically zoom in on this area right here. Steve, what is the latest detection that you can find about this hurricane and look at the satellite?
Well, you can see what is considered to be an eye circulation that is roughly right in here now, and a very heavy band of heavy thunderstorm activity on the back side of the circulation. That's sort of the eastern eye wall, if you will. And there's also some heavy thunderstorms moving up on the northern side as well. And this thing continues to push rather quickly off toward Puerto Rico, and it's going to the western edge of the eye wall is almost to extreme eastern Puerto Rico already.
And just to get you oriented too, that's St. Croix, St. Thomas, St. John's, Tortola. And we heard word out of Tortola that there hasn't been that much damage up there, so that's at least good news. But interestingly enough, as we look at the Doppler radar out of Puerto Rico, down around St. Croix, they didn't do too bad on the western side of the storm, but now that it's moved on off to the west, they're just getting nailed there on that east side.
Yeah, very heavy rain there, so that some flash flooding could be occurring, and also those thunderstorms, as we've mentioned repeatedly, could be bringing down some very strong winds to the surface, so hopefully they're still taking shelter.
Now, Steve, even though that pressure's come up a little bit, Just looking at this from a radar perspective, does it look like it's getting a little better organized?
The circulation is better organized. Part of that, too, is the fact that the overall hurricane center is within the radar, which is right here, within the radar beam visibility, so you see the whole thing better. But the other thing to note, too, is even though the pressures come up just a hair as well, the symmetry of these rain bands is very important because it's bringing down much stronger winds than it would have even though the pressure were lower.
Now, of course, the power's out at St. Croix. They've turned off the power at St. Thomas, and that's for safety reasons as well. And we can't get any weather observations out of there. But what do you think the winds are with that core over St. Croix right now?
Well, we had mentioned before when we talked to that emergency manager there had mentioned gusts to 100 miles per hour, and they still should be getting gusts to around 100. But in the next couple of hours, those winds should be tapering off there, at least in the eastern section of those islands. So they should be getting a little bit better break here in another hour or two.
Do you think that'll be one of the hardest hit areas just by looking at what you've seen today and comparing it with yesterday?
It's hard to say because early on the intensity was greater, but they wasn't near as direct a hit. So we'll just have to wait and see. Puerto Rico is yet to be struck yet as well, and they could get some very nasty consequences from it, not just wind, but storm surge, flooding, flash flooding as well.
What kind of surge can we expect?
Well, the 4 to 6 foot range, 4 to 7 foot range is possible, but this area over here on southwestern Puerto Rico is particularly vulnerable to surge. So as the hurricane goes by in the southeastern sector, these winds over here, when they come up into this area, could drive some water up there that could be approaching 10 feet, depending on the strength of the winds at the time.
And then you've got an east-west oriented mountain range across Puerto Rico. What is that going to do for the rainfall?
Well, that orographic lift, as we call it, where the air lifts up over the mountains, can produce locally double the rainfall that you would expect at the coast. So if you get 5, 7 inches at the coast, you could get 10 to 15 inches inland. And some of those typical small creeks or rivers could fill up very quickly. The flooding is typically related to the rate of rainfall and not the total amount of rainfall, so we have to keep that in mind as well. It's a complicated thing, but flooding should be a problem.
Perhaps on a positive note, is Puerto Rico going to weaken the hurricane? The fact that it's going to go over Puerto Rico, or very likely could spend a good bit of time over Puerto Rico.
Definitely any landmass that the hurricane tracks over will weaken it. Islands like this, though, keep in mind, the center is here, but the overall circulation is much larger. Right. So there's still a significant portion over the ocean, and it will come out somewhat intact and could potentially re-strengthen and keep going. And that's what the Hurricane Center expects. Some weakening, but not to the extent that it's going to fall apart by any means.
All right, talking about keeping going, where do we go from here with this? The satellite picture here, the wider shot, you can see Florida, you can see Hispaniola. Where is this thing going?
Well, right now we have the westerly flow way up here, and that's typically where we see the recurvature. South of that we have a big ridge of high pressure in here with the flow coming back around toward the east, and that continues all the way down here. There's a little weak upper level low in here, but hurricane being down here, there's no place for it to go but generally to the west or west-northwest the next 24 to 48 hours. So we do not see recurvature up here in the near future.
And with the model data that we're looking at now, there is not a lot of difference in the tracks, is that correct? Out through 72 hours?
The 24 to 48 hour time frame, they generally take it in this general path, right in the middle of the swath of uncertainty that we have there. Out to 72, there is some uncertainty, but in general, it doesn't look like it should be somewhere in the southeastern Bahamas.
And it's very unlikely, too, that this is just going to like stop and turn around and go another direction.
Unlikely right now.
Okay, so it's definitely something we need to be thinking about back in the United States as well down the road Thursday, Friday morning. Thank you very much, Steve. Let's go back into the studio and find out about the severe weather we're dealing with today as we go back and find out what's cooking out there.
Thanks, Jim. And Steve will continue to update us from the Forecast Center. This edition of Weather Center is brought to you by Clear Eyes. We have a frontal boundary. Notice at the surface map that the frontal boundary kind of acting like a warm front right across the Central Plains. Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri. We've got some problems in this area. Now, we have seen some showers ahead of the front up in the northeast, but not near.
Puerto Rico is bracing for the impact of powerful Hurricane George at this hour. Winds and waves are lashing parts of the coast, and many people have fled to shelters. Hello, I'm Mike Bono, and welcome to this edition of Weather Center. Let's go right to the Forecast Center, where Jim Cantore has the latest on this dangerous situation.
Thank you very much, Mike. And already the islands of Antigua, St. Martin have come in with moderate damage reports. St. Kitts and Nevis, some serious reports of damage as well. And now, without reports, just taking a look at what's gone on today around St. Croix, they've probably had a pretty hard hit from Hurricane George, and it continues to move on to the west, taking aim on Puerto Rico. Here's the 5 o'clock advisory from the Hurricane Center. Winds still at 110 miles an hour. We have seen a little bit of a pressure fall before this thing has moved on in. 967 millibars there, 440 miles east of San Juan at the present time, 18-0 north, 65.6 west. That's where they put the center of circulation. We still have the warnings out for the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic, and now watches are posted for the north coast of Haiti, the southeastern Bahamas, eastern Cuba, and also the Turks and Caicos Islands. And as we continue to watch this thing move toward the west, it's of big interest to us. John, hurricane expert John Hope joins us now. And John, let's take a look at this hurricane and tell us why it's deepened a little bit this afternoon.
Well, we've watched it get better organized all afternoon. We can see that on the satellite picture as well as on the radar. And for the first time, we're able to see an eye for the last 2 or 3 hours. And this eye is making its way toward the coast now. It's just about south of Vieques. The eye wall, northern eye wall, is over that island, as you can see here, looking at the radar. This is Vieques right there.
Right.
And so this is still moving toward a little bit north of due west at about 15 miles an hour. And the next hour or 2 hours perhaps, the eye, or at least part of the eye, is going to be over the eastern part of the main island of Puerto Rico. And it looks now as if it's going to move diagonally across the island, and that's going to take about 6 to 8 hours or something at the rate it's going before it comes out on the northwest side of Puerto Rico.
And unfortunately, I had a quick time to look at this satellite or this radar time before we came on the air, and this may be as old as 45 minutes.
Well, it's a little bit old, I think, but things are changing not that rapidly. These radar pictures are close enough together so you don't get a lot of sense of movement, but it certainly is still continues to move at about 15 miles per hour.
John, do you think the radar site that is right here, do you think that could have been knocked over, or do you think that's why we're not getting a signal?
No idea. I wouldn't want to speculate on that. You got all kinds of power considerations and that sort of thing.
Right.
But while we have that radar up, we talked about the wind and the storm surge. It's going to be a very significant storm surge, and where you have strong onshore winds, initially up in the northeast part, it could be even higher. But the rain is going to be extremely heavy, and Puerto Rico is constructed so that there are a lot of mountains, a lot of streams there that flood very, very quickly, and so this is a kind of a rain that you have to be very careful of. You could have flash floods in very short order just from the rainfall.
And when is the last time we've seen a tropical system go the length of Puerto
We haven't
Rico?
seen that happen too often. Back in Hugo in 1989, that hit Puerto Rico real hard, but it hit the northeast corner of Puerto Rico. And then more recent times, 1996 I think it was, we had Hortense that caught just the southeastern part of the island. We have to go back a long ways before we find hurricanes that traverse the whole length of the island. There was one major hurricane, a tremendous hurricane, category 4 or 5, the San Felipe hurricane in 1928 that went all the way across. And then there was another lesser hurricane in 1931 that made it all the way across from east to west.
All right, and looks like this one's going to join those ranks, not as powerful, but
well, not as powerful. This one looks like more of a diagonal path across the island, but you're only talking about an island now that's about 100 miles or so long.
Right.
So it's not going to take all that much time, and it's not as if it were a major island, a much bigger island with higher mountains. The mountains in Puerto Rico, I think the highest peaks are in the order of 4,000 feet or so, but that's enough to disrupt the circulation a little bit. So that should weaken it at least slightly, or at least not let it get any stronger as it crosses Puerto Rico.
Well, some of the latest tropical models that we've looked at, some of the newest guidance of tonight's, specifically the AVN model and the NOGAPS, continue to show very little weakening in the high-pressure ridge, which is off to the north here. Now,
that's a pretty narrow high-pressure ridge, but nevertheless, our assessment is up to this point that ridge is strong enough and it's going to stay intact enough to keep this on basically a path toward the west-northwest for at least the next 3 days. And that is going to bring it up in this neighborhood somewhere, certainly close enough to Florida to cause concern in southeast U.S.
We actually have a projected path picture we can show the folks, and John, you can explain to us what this is. Here's that graphic there I believe that was based on an earlier.
Yeah, I'm not sure this is updated on the, but I think this is very similar.
Yeah.
But anyway, what you see here is a cone-shaped area. That's about what the state of the science is. You know, we can't tell whether it's going to go here or there exactly, but the most likely one is about halfway in between. Now, what we think that will do is come across Puerto Rico, just skim the very north coast of the Dominican Republic, and re-emerge back over the water here, probably a little bit north of the eastern tip of Cuba. So even tonight, or early tomorrow morning, when this eye gets back out over the Mona Passage, that's the passage between the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico, that's enough water to let it regenerate.
And is there something climatologically that you look for here with hurricanes or tropical systems, or is there a warmer water pocket that sometimes gives these things a little extra boost, or what?
Well, the water's this time of year down there where this hurricane is always warm enough, and it certainly is now, to support the tropical storm or hurricane development. And then, of course, when it goes up here, you get very warm water. You know, you got the Gulf Stream coming around like this, so it's still not too late in the year for hurricanes to get strong in this area.
Anything surprised you about this thing yet, or is it pretty much behaving?
Well, I think I was a little bit surprised. We had the day before yesterday, as you recall, a very well-defined eye, and conditions looked a little more favorable than they turned out to be, and we've been doing a lot of post-analysis to see what wasn't favorable. And what we discovered was that the outflow was kind of inhibited on the west part of the hurricane. But now that situation has changed a little bit. It's getting more favorable, and so we are seeing a pressure drop, and we are seeing the winds pick up a bit, I think.
One final question. Could this get as strong as it was?
Well, it could, yes. Likely, I think not.
Okay, let's hope not. Thank you very much, John Hope, our hurricane expert here at the Weather Channel. For your weather needs, we've got weather.com on the internet for you, and for your U.S. forecast needs, we have Bob Stokes, I believe, standing by in the studio. Let's go find out what's cooking. Or excuse me, Mike Bono.
Okay, Jim. We're looking at a little bit of autumn weather coming in to contrast with some of the tropical weather we've been seeing in the southern part of the country. Heavy rains, still the remnant energy and some moisture left over from Hermine, which came on into the Gulf Coast. Even that low pressure is still hanging in parts of Mississippi and Alabama, but a totally different kind of air mass coming in, even little patches of frost last night in parts of North Dakota. The Northeast, though, it's warm, it's muggy, and a front is approaching. You folks around New York and Pennsylvania, no stranger to severe weather lately. Look at all the cloudiness, plenty of humidity right from the Gulf being drawn into New England, and some disturbed autumn-like coolish and wet weather. Nebraska, Kansas going to very hot in Texas and Oklahoma. Severe threat is there, though, in Massachusetts and Connecticut north of about Hartford, Interstate 86, Interstate 91, and then we have the potential for some severe thunderstorms and heavy rain over the 48 contiguous states, which we'll get to in a minute. But first, the tropical update. We'll give it to you in English, and then we have a Spanish version for you as well. The big problem, of course, is Hurricane George, and that is moving on through the Atlantic Ocean. In fact, it's now making landfall in Puerto Rico. On the tropical update, we'll notice that our storms are out there. We have George moving right on through the Caribbean Sea, and also we'll be telling you about this in a minute. We have Ivan out there further east in the Atlantic Ocean, and Ivan showing up very nicely, but it doesn't look like it's a big threat right now to make landfall there on the right side of the screen. Hurricane George coming into Puerto Rico right now. It's taken that track across the Atlantic Ocean, some waviness, but almost as straight as an arrow, if you can put an arrow through it, a straight line. Moving west-northwest at 16 miles an hour. 110 miles an hour. In fact, we have a later advisory that has come in with 115 miles an hour, so apparently we've upped, or the National Hurricane has upped the wind speed again. Pressure is down to 967 millibars, and it's centered 40 miles southeast of San Juan, Puerto Rico, which is in a hurricane warning. Apparently the warning has been dropped or will be dropped as soon as it gets through the U.S. Virgin Islands, but they are still in hurricane conditions. The Dominican Republic, east of Haiti now, the next 24 hours, maybe sooner, hurricane conditions are imminent. Hurricane watch, 36 hours or so, you could have hurricane conditions, parts of Cuba, southern Bahamas, and Haiti. As we see a very impressive radar presentation, the eye of the storm, the island of Vieques right here. We have St. Thomas coming out of the hurricane conditions, St. Croix just about out of the hurricane conditions, but extremely heavy squalls into Puerto Rico, the east end, San Juan just about getting tropical storm force winds. San Juan could have hurricane wind gusts and blinding rain any minute now. It's coming right up on San Juan, and the mountains are getting hit with extremely heavy rain. Wind gusts, hurricane wind gusts now into the eastern tip of Puerto Rico, still affecting the Virgin Islands. We're going to have a complete rundown on this for you at the top of the hour with Jim Cantore and John Hope. Tropical storm Ivan appears to be staying over the ocean, 45-mile-an-hour winds and no threat to land. We have a brand new one, Jeanne, coming off the African coastline, 40-mile-an-hour winds, and we're going to be watching Jeanne as it moves westward right here. Now it's time for Jose Marquez with the Latin American version. He is from our Latin American Weather Channel. Jose?
Sí, muy buenas tardes, amigos. En estos momentos, el huracán George está localizado a 18 grados norte, 65.6 grados oeste, alrededor de 40 millas al sureste de San Juan, Puerto Rico. Los vientos sostenidos son de 115 millas por hora. Esto hace este huracán en la categoría 3 de la escala Saffir-Simpson, sumamente peligroso, y continúa moviéndose oeste-noroeste a 16 millas por hora. Es más, continúan los avisos para Puerto Rico, la República Dominicana, las Islas Vírgenes Británicas y Americanas, mientras que continúan las alertas de huracán para la costa norte de Haití, las Bahamas y el noreste y el este de Cuba. De la misma manera, quisiera mencionar impresionante este sistema tropical que está afectando ya lo que es Puerto Rico, con fuertes lluvias, con marejadas, la marejada ciclónica, además de ráfagas de hasta 100 millas por hora se han reportado en Fajardo, y el radar así lo muestra, con el ojo prácticamente en el sur de Vieques acercándose hacia Fajardo. And at this moment we're going to pass this information to our friend Mike Bono.
Thank you very much, Jose. In the domestic situation, we've got some showers in the south, the remnant moisture of Hermine, and in the northeast, watch out for strong thunderstorms just inland from New York City. More on that on Weather Center.
We're tracking the path of Hurricane George as it barrels through the Caribbean and heads toward the U.S. We're ahead of the storm, and so are you. Watch Weather Center.
Nature's been teaching us some hard lessons lately. Weather patterns are changing, and so are your chances of being flooded. I'm James Lee Witt. The fact is, there are now more floods than any other disaster in this country. And in the last few years, floods have hit all 50 states. It's time we put our future on safer ground with FEMA's bold initiative called Project Impact. It's basically common sense. Instead of spending millions picking up the pieces, neighbors and businesses and government are planning ahead, working together to reduce the damage that disasters leave behind. We all want to make communities disaster resistant. And here's something you can do right now to protect your home and family. Get National Flood Insurance. Talk to your insurance agent, or call now for free